Okay, Mark, before we start today's episode, I want to ask the audience one question, just one, and I want them to answer it honestly, in their own head, not out loud yet, just to themselves.
I'm ready. What's the question?
Right now, when you watch Netflix or any TV show or any movie in English, be honest with yourself, brutally honest. What language are your subtitles in?
Oh,
And I know what's about to happen in the comments. About 60% of people are going to say English, and maybe half of them are actually telling the truth.
half, maybe. The other half are quietly, slightly embarrassed because they've been telling themselves for years that they're improving their English with Netflix, but the subtitles are in their native language, and so they're not really watching an English show. They're reading their own language while English plays in the background.
And here's the worst part. They know it. Deep down, they feel it. There's a small voice that says, this isn't really working. But the bigger voice says, but I'm watching English content, so it must be helping somehow, right?
And the bigger voice is wrong, or at least it's exaggerating. Watching English content with subtitles in your native language is, in terms of actual English improvement, almost completely useless. We're going to explain exactly why in a moment, but first, let's name what's happening.
It's a lie, a comfortable lie, and almost every English learner tells it to themselves at some point.
The passive learning lie. The belief that just being exposed to English content equals learning. That 4 hours of Netflix is 4 hours of English improvement. That your eyes on a screen with English playing somewhere in the room is the same as deliberate practice.
And it's not. It's nowhere close. And today, we're going to explain exactly why. We're going to show you what your brain is actually doing when you watch a show with native language subtitles. And we're going to give you the protocol that turns Netflix from a comfortable lie into the single most powerful learning tool you have.
Because Netflix can be incredible for English learners, genuinely transformative, but only if you're using it the right way, and almost nobody is.
Welcome to Side by Side English Podcasts. I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie. Today's episode is for the B2 or C1 learner who has been improving with Netflix for years and quietly suspects that the hours are not adding up to results, who knows the actors, knows the plots, knows the shows, but doesn't feel any sharper in real English. This episode is going to explain why and what to do about it.
Stay with us. We have the neuroscience of passive versus active learning, the brutal truth about what your brain is actually doing when you watch with native language subtitles, of 4 levels of watching from completely passive to deeply active, a complete active watching protocol you can use this week, a role play of 2 learners with the same hours but different results, the most common excuses learners give themselves about subtitles, and a word tour with 6 powerful B2 to C1 words.
Quick question for the comments before we begin. Be honest, what language are your subtitles in right now? English? Your native language? No subtitles at all? Drop a one-word answer. We are going to count. We want to see what the real numbers look like.
Okay, let's expose the lie.
So, Sophie, let's start with the science. What actually happens in the brain when someone watches a show in English but with subtitles in their native language?
Okay, this is the key insight of the whole episode. When you have subtitles in your native language, your brain does something it has been doing for decades. It reads. Reading in your native language is so automatic, so deeply wired, that your brain does it without any conscious effort. The subtitles make maybe 10% of your attention.
But here's the trick. Even that 10% is enough to block the English processing.
Completely block it, because the brain has a hierarchy when it comes to language input, and reading in your native language is always at the top. Anything else, the brain pushes down or ignores. So when English audio comes in, the brain says, we already got the meaning from the subtitles, we don't need to process this. And the English audio becomes background noise.
Background noise, like music in a cafe.
Exactly. You're not really processing it. You're not parsing the words. You're not catching the connected speech patterns. You're not building any of the listening skills we talked about in the Dirty Audio episode. The English is there, but your brain isn't engaging with it.
And this is what makes the passive learning lie so painful, because the learner feels like they're doing English work. They have an English show open, they can hear English audio, they can see English actors, they've blocked out 3 hours for English practice, but their brain isn't engaging with any of it.
They're watching a show in their native language with an English soundtrack. That's what's actually happening.
And after 4 hours of this, they wonder why their English hasn't moved. The answer is because their brain wasn't doing English work. Their brain was reading their native language, like always.
And this isn't a moral failing. This isn't laziness. This is just how the brain works. The brain takes the easiest available path, and the easiest path is always native language reading. Even if you consciously want to focus on the English, your brain has already pulled the meaning from the subtitles before you have a chance to engage with the audio.
And here's something really painful. The more you watch with native language subtitles, the worse this gets, because the brain reinforces the habit. It learns when English audio plays, ignore it and read. That becomes the default. So over years of watching English content with native subtitles, learners can actually become better at ignoring English audio. The skill they're accidentally building is the opposite of what they wanted.
They're getting good at not listening to English, which is the worst possible outcome. And this is the whole heart of the passive learning lie. Time spent with English in the background is not the same as time spent engaging with English. They feel similar, they look similar, they might even be on the same screen, but they produce completely different results.
And the difference is one word, engagement, or as we like to call it, active watching versus passive watching.
Yes, let's actually break this down into a clear model, because I think learners need to see the full spectrum from completely passive to deeply active, so they can place themselves honestly on the scale.
Yes, the 4 levels of watching, from least useful to most useful.
Level 1, passive watching with native language subtitles. This is what we've been describing. English content, subtitles in your first language, most of your attention on the subtitles, the English audio is mostly background. This is statistically what most B2 or C1 learners actually do, and it is the least effective form of English practice. Maybe 10% of your viewing time produces real English benefit.
Level 2.
Level 2, passive watching with English subtitles. Now we're improving. You've changed the subtitles to English. Your brain still defaults to reading rather than listening, but at least now what you're reading is English. So you're getting reading practice, vocabulary exposure, and your eyes are connecting written English to spoken English. This is significantly better than level 1, maybe 40% useful, but your listening is still not really being trained because your eyes are doing the work for your ears.
Level 3.
Level 3. Active watching with English subtitles. This is where the real benefit starts. You've put on English subtitles, but now you are consciously listening alongside reading. You're pausing when you hear something interesting. You're noticing new words. You're rewinding to hear something again. You're using the subtitles to support your listening, not to replace it. This level is where most of the magic happens, maybe 70% useful. Level 4?
Level 4. Active watching with no subtitles. The hardest, the most uncomfortable, but also the most powerful for listening growth. No subtitles. You catch what you catch. You miss what you miss. Your ears do all the work, and your ears over time get sharper. This is where listening fluency is actually built, maybe 90 to 100% useful for listening, depending on the content.
And the painful realization for most learners is that they live almost entirely at level 1 and level 2, with occasional brave attempts at level 3. And level 4 mostly never happens.
Which means almost all their English watching time is producing maybe 10 to 40% of its possible value. They could be getting 2 to 5 times more out of the same hours.
Same Netflix, same hours, vastly different results.
And the difference is not what you watch, it is how you watch.
Okay, so let's talk about the active watching protocol, the system you can use this week to turn your Netflix time from a comfortable lie into real growth.
Yes, the active watching protocol. 5 rules.
Rule 1.
Rule 1. Choose your subtitle language deliberately, not by default, not by what's comfortable. Deliberately. For most B2 and C1 learners, that means English subtitles for most content, and no subtitles for content that's a level or 2 below your current ceiling.
And native language subtitles?
Native language subtitles are for content that is genuinely too hard for you to follow in English at all, or for content that is so culturally dense, like fast-paced comedy with lots of slang, that you'd miss most of the meaning otherwise. But even then, use them as a tool, not a habit, and try to switch them off as soon as you can manage.
Rule 2.
Rule 2.
Choose content that is one level above your comfort, not 2 or 3. This is called the I+1 principle in linguistics, slightly above your current level, but not so far above that everything is incomprehensible. If you're a strong B2, watch B2 plus content, C1 level shows, not Shakespeare, not extremely technical documentaries, something close to your level with just enough stretch.
Because the brain only adapts when it's slightly stretched.
Slightly stretched, not overwhelmed. If you're missing more than 30%, the content is too hard. If you're missing less than 10%, it's too easy.
Rule 3.
Rule 3. Watch in segments, not marathons. The 4-hour Netflix session is one of the great enemies of real progress because after about 45 minutes of focused English watching, the brain is genuinely tired. After that point, your active engagement collapses, even if your eyes are still on the screen.
And then you just keep watching, but you stop processing.
Exactly. You enter passive mode for the next 3 hours. So the rule is watch in chunks of 30 to 45 minutes with breaks in between. The breaks let the brain consolidate what it just learned, and then the next chunk is just as active as the first.
Rule 4.
Rule 4. Stop, replay, and look up. This is the single most powerful active watching technique. Whenever you hear something interesting, something you didn't quite catch, something that sounded like a native phrase you don't fully understand, you stop the show. You go back 10 seconds, you watch it again, and if needed, you pause and look up the word or phrase.
And this is where learners resist because stopping breaks the flow of the show. It feels disruptive.
It is disruptive. That's the point. The disruption is the learning. Every time you stop, rewind, and engage, you are taking a moment of language and turning it into a memory. Without those moments, the language passes through you. With them, it sticks.
Rule 5.
Rule 5. Rewatch deliberately. Not the whole show, not even the whole episode, but specific scenes that contain the language you want to absorb. Maybe a great dialogue, maybe a piece of natural conversation, maybe a beautifully worded explanation. Rewatch that scene 2 or 3 times. Each pass, you'll catch more.
And this is where learners completely break the pattern of consumption-only watching because they're using the show as a resource, not just entertainment.
And the magic is this doesn't ruin the show. It enhances it. You start to notice details you would have missed. You appreciate the writing. You hear the rhythm. The show becomes richer, not less enjoyable.
5 rules. Apply them, and a 1-hour active watching session does more for your English than a 4-hour passive Netflix marathon.
And that ratio is real. Active watching is roughly 4 to 5 times more efficient than passive watching.
Which means if you're complaining you don't have time to study English, you might already have the time. You just need to convert your existing watching into active watching. And suddenly, you have an hour a day of high-quality practice you didn't have to find anywhere else.
Same Netflix, same hours, completely different outcome. Okay, let's do a role play, but this one is going to be a comparison role play. 2 learners, same starting point, same 1 year of watching Netflix to improve English, completely different results. Sophie, set them up.
Yes. Imagine 2 learners, both B2, both started 1 year ago. Both have watched roughly the same amount of English content this year, maybe 400 hours each.
Learner 1, Maria. She watches with subtitles in her native language. She watches mostly at night, after work, when she's tired. She watches in long sessions, 3 or 4 hours at a time. She enjoys the shows, she follows the plots. She'd say if you asked her, yes, I watch lots of English content. I'm practicing all the time.
Learner 2, Diego, same B2 starting point, same 400 hours of content this year, but Diego watches with English subtitles. He watches in 45-minute focused sessions 2 or 3 times a week. He pauses regularly, he replays scenes, he notes down phrases, he occasionally watches a scene a second day the next day.
Now imagine we meet both of them today, 1 year later. What do they sound like?
Maria sounds almost exactly like she did a year ago. Maybe she knows the names of more actors, maybe she can name more shows, but her actual English speaking has not changed. Her English listening hasn't improved noticeably. Her vocabulary is the same, her speed is the same, her ear is the same.
Because her brain spent 400 hours not really doing English work.
Right. Diego, on the other hand, is noticeably sharper. His listening has expanded. He recognizes connected speech patterns he didn't recognize before. His vocabulary has grown. Not by hundreds of words, but by dozens of natural phrases he absorbed from real dialogues. His speaking has more rhythm, more idiom, more native flavor.
Because his brain spent every hour actually engaging.
Same content, same hours, same Netflix subscription, but the active watcher built English fluency. The passive watcher built Netflix knowledge.
And this is the most painful contrast in language learning, because Maria is going to look at Diego and think he must have studied more, or he must have done private lessons, or he must have natural talent, when the truth is he just used his time differently. The hours were the same, the engagement was different.
And anyone listening right now can become Diego, starting this week without finding extra time, without signing up for new courses, just by changing how they use the time they're already spending.
Now let's talk about the most common excuses learners give themselves about subtitles, because I bet many people listening are already mentally arguing with us, and I want to address each of those arguments directly.
Yes, the 5 excuses, the 5 things learners say to themselves to justify staying at level 1.
Excuse 1. I can't understand fast English without my native subtitles.
This is the most common one, and the answer is, of course you can't, not yet, because you've been training yourself to not listen for years. The solution isn't more native subtitles. The solution is to start with content that is closer to your level, with English subtitles, until your listening catches up. Then you graduate to harder content, then eventually to no subtitles. You build the skill in steps.
Excuse 2. I just want to relax and enjoy the show.
Completely valid. Sometimes you do just want to relax, and that's fine. But then call it what it is, entertainment, not English practice. Don't tell yourself you spent 3 hours improving your English when you were actually just relaxing in front of a screen. Be honest with yourself, and then, if you want, schedule separate time for actual English practice with active watching.
Excuse 3. I miss too much without native subtitles.
2 things here. First, you don't have to catch everything to benefit. Even missing 30% of the dialogue is still much better for your English than reading native subtitles and missing 100% of the listening practice. Second, the brain only adapts to what's hard. If you only consume what's easy, your listening doesn't grow. The missing 30% is the work. That's where the learning happens.
Excuse 4. Watching active is exhausting. I can't do it for long.
Yes, that's the point. Active watching uses real mental energy, which is why we said 45-minute sessions, not 3-hour marathons. You don't need to be active for 3 hours. You need to be active for 30 to 45 minutes, and those 45 minutes will give you more growth than the 3 hours of passive ever did.
And excuse 5. I learn English by being immersed. Background English helps me.
This is one of the most persistent myths in language learning, the idea that just having English around makes you learn it. The research is very clear. Pure background exposure with no engagement contributes almost nothing to language learning. Babies don't learn language by hearing background noise. They learn through engaged interaction with caregivers. Adults learn even less from pure exposure. Engagement is the variable, not exposure.
And once you understand this, you stop hiding behind the comfortable lie. You stop pretending that passive consumption equals improvement. You face the reality, and then you can do something about it.
And the wonderful thing is, the solution is not more time. The solution is better time. The hours you already spend on Netflix used actively are enough to produce dramatic improvement. You don't need to find another hour anywhere. You just need to use the hour you already have.
Word tour?
Word tour. First word, passive. Passive means not actively engaging, receiving without doing, letting something happen rather than participating in it, the opposites of active. And in language learning, the difference between passive and active intake is one of the most important concepts you can understand.
For example, the passive learning lie tricks millions of learners into believing that just being near English content is the same as engaging with it. Or, he had a passive role in the project for the first month, observing rather than contributing, before he finally jumped in. Repeat, passive.
Passive.
Next, engagement. Engagement means active involvement, real attention, conscious participation. It is the difference between watching and absorbing. And in modern English, engagement is one of the most important words in conversations about learning, work, social media, and relationships.
For example, the number of hours you spend with English content matters far less than the level of engagement you bring to those hours. Or, the teacher's most effective trick was to keep engagement high for the full hour, with no one drifting off in the back of the class. Repeat, engagement.
Engagement.
Next, to consolidate. To consolidate means to combine, strengthen, or make something more solid through time and integration. In learning, we consolidate memories during breaks and during sleep. New language becomes lasting language only through consolidation.
For example, the breaks between active watching sessions matter just as much as the watching itself, because that is when the brain consolidates what you've just learned. Or, after the merger, the two companies took 6 months to fully consolidate their teams and systems. Repeat, consolidate.
Consolidate.
Next, to reinforce. We've used this word before, but it's worth repeating here because of how directly it applies. To reinforce means to strengthen something through repeated use, especially habits or patterns. Whatever you do over and over becomes reinforced in your brain, including the habit of ignoring English audio.
For example, every hour you spend with native subtitles, you reinforce your brain's habit of not really listening to English. Or, the team kept reinforcing the same approach until it became impossible to challenge it. Repeat, reinforce.
Reinforce.
Next, to deceive yourself. To deceive yourself means to convince yourself of something that isn't really true, usually because the lie is more comfortable than the truth. It is the heart of what we've been describing today. Learners deceive themselves into believing that Netflix is English practice, when often it isn't.
For example, most learners deceive themselves about how much real English work they are doing because the comfortable lie is much easier than the honest answer. Or he had deceived himself for years about his actual financial situation until the numbers finally forced him to face it. Repeat, deceive yourself.
Deceive yourself.
And finally, deliberate. Deliberate means done with conscious thought, careful choice, and intention, the opposite of automatic or thoughtless. Deliberate practice is one of the most important concepts in skill development, and deliberate watching, or you choose your subtitle, your content, your timing, your engagement level, is what turns Netflix from entertainment into real practice.
For example, the difference between passive watching and deliberate watching is the difference between 400 wasted hours and 400 transformative ones. Or, she made a deliberate decision to leave her job, even though everyone around her thought it was risky. Repeat, deliberate.
Deliberate.
6 words today: passive, engagement, consolidate, reinforce, deceive yourself, and deliberate. And every one of these is a real, modern, useful English word that captures something specific about how learning, attention, and habits actually work.
And every one of them is a word that we genuinely hope sticks with you after this episode, because they are the words that define whether your hours are spent on English or lost on English. Sophie, if there is one thing you want every person watching to take away from this episode, what is it?
That time near English is not the same as time in English, and almost every learner watching today has been confusing those two things for a very long time. Watching Netflix in English with subtitles in your native language is not English practice. It might be entertainment, it might be relaxation, but it isn't learning. And until you face that honestly, your hours are not going to add up to results.
And the wonderful news is this is one of the easiest fixes in language learning. You don't need to find more time. You don't need to buy new courses. You don't need to enroll in a program. You just need to change the subtitle setting. Watch in shorter, focused sessions. Pause and replay when you hear something good. Pick content slightly above your level. That's it. That's the whole protocol.
And the difference after a month is enormous. After 6 months, it's transformative. After a year, the gap between you and the version of you who kept watching passively is so large, you can hear it in every sentence you speak.
And the version of you who is still watching passively is reachable today, right now. The moment this episode ends, when you go back to whatever show you're watching, you can change the subtitle setting. You can decide to pause pause and replay. You can choose to engage instead of consume.
Small challenge before we go. For the next 7 days, every time you watch any English content, follow 3 of the 5 rules. Enrich subtitles, 45-minute sessions, stop, rewind, and look up. Just those 3, not the full protocol, just those 3.
And after 7 days, come back and drop a comment. Tell us, did you feel a difference? Did your listening start to sharpen even a little? Did you catch yourself recognizing more phrases? We genuinely want to know.
Because the results from active watching come fast, faster than almost any other change you can make in your English. And after 1 week of this, most learners feel it, even if just slightly. That feeling is the proof that the lie was costing you something, and the truth is finally giving back.
I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to be honest with yourselves today.
Stop pretending, start engaging. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.